Imagine waking up one morning, opening your computer, and realizing that something fundamental has shifted in the world of desktop computing. For decades, people have debated whether Linux could ever truly compete with mainstream operating systems on everyday desktops. And suddenly, a new feature arrives that feels less like a small update and more like the beginning of an entirely new era. This isn't just about a new button in the settings menu or a slightly faster file manager. It's about a deep architectural change that redefines how users interact with their systems, how developers build applications, and how the concept of a personal computer evolves in a world driven by cloud services, artificial intelligence, and user freedom. Today we're diving into why many enthusiasts believe Linux has just crossed a turning point, and why this moment could shape the future of desktop computing in ways most people didn't expect. For years, one of the biggest challenges facing Linux desktops has been fragmentation. There were dozens of distributions, multiple desktop environments, and countless package formats. While this diversity empowered advanced users, it also created confusion for newcomers who wanted something that simply worked out of the box. The new feature that everyone is talking about aims to reduce that friction by changing how applications are delivered and run. Instead of relying heavily on traditional system-wide packages that might conflict with one another, modern Linux desktops are moving toward containerized application ecosystems that isolate software while maintaining deep integration with the system. The idea sounds technical, but the effect is simple. Applications become easier to install, safer to run, and more consistent across different distributions. Picture a future where installing a program on Linux feels almost identical, no matter which distribution you use. You click Install, and the application launches in its own secure environment without worrying about missing libraries or dependency conflicts. Behind the scenes, the system ensures that apps have only the permissions they truly need. This shift doesn't just improve security, it fundamentally changes user trust. People who once hesitated to experiment with Linux because of complicated setup processes may now find an experience that feels surprisingly polished and approachable. It's not just a convenience upgrade. It's a philosophical shift towards stability and predictability. Another reason this feature feels revolutionary is how it aligns with the rise of immutable operating systems. Traditionally, users could modify almost every part of their Linux installation, which was powerful but sometimes risky. Immutable systems flip that idea by making the core operating system read-only while allowing users to install and customize applications freely. The benefit is enormous. Updates become more reliable. System breakage becomes rare, and rolling back to a previous version becomes as simple as restarting your computer. Think about how many times people have feared updates on their computers, worrying that something might break. This new approach aims to eliminate that anxiety altogether. The conversation doesn't stop at stability. Performance is another area where Linux is making bold moves. Developers are embracing modern display protocols, improved graphics pipelines, and better hardware acceleration, all designed to reduce latency and enhance responsiveness. When you combine these advancements with secure application sandboxing, you get a desktop environment that feels both lightweight and powerful. It's the kind of balance that many users have wanted for years, especially those transitioning from heavier operating systems that consume large amounts of system resources. But what truly makes this moment feel historic is how it intersects with artificial intelligence. The new generation of Linux desktops isn't just about running apps locally. It's about integrating intelligent assistants, automation tools, and adaptive workflows directly into the system. Imagine your desktop learning how you work, organizing windows automatically, suggesting shortcuts, or optimizing performance based on your habits. Instead of being a passive interface, the desktop becomes an active partner in productivity. This is where Linux's open nature shines, because developers worldwide can experiment freely, building AI-powered features that integrate deeply with the operating system without being locked behind proprietary restrictions. Many longtime Linux users argue that openness has always been the platform's greatest strength. But now that openness is colliding with modern design philosophies, the result is a desktop experience that feels less like a collection of separate tools and more like a cohesive ecosystem. Developers are focusing heavily on consistency, improving application design guidelines, and creating interfaces that feel modern without sacrificing performance. The gap between Linux and other major desktop operating systems is shrinking rapidly, and in some areas, Linux is starting to lead rather than follow. Security is another reason why this feature is gaining so much attention. Traditional desktop environments often relied on users making the right decisions about software permissions, which could be risky for less experienced people. With the new sandboxed application model, programs operate with strict boundaries by default. If an app wants access to your files, camera, or network, it must request permission explicitly. This approach mirrors what smartphones have done for years, but implementing it on a full desktop environment changes the game entirely. Suddenly, Linux isn't just the choice for developers and enthusiasts. It becomes a compelling option for everyday users who value privacy and control. One of the most fascinating aspects of this transformation is how it affects software developers themselves. In the past, building applications for Linux meant dealing with multiple packaging systems and ensuring compatibility across countless distributions. Now, developers can create one package that works almost everywhere. This lowers the barrier to entry and encourages more creators to target Linux as a primary platform rather than an afterthought. As more high-quality applications arrive, the ecosystem grows stronger, attracting even more users and creating a positive feedback loop that fuels innovation. There's also a cultural shift happening within the Linux community. For years, debates raged about customization versus simplicity, power versus accessibility. The new direction doesn't eliminate choice, but it does prioritize user experience in ways that feel more welcoming to newcomers. Instead of expecting users to learn complex commands just to install software, the system presents intuitive graphical tools that handle the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Advanced users still have full control if they want it, but beginners can enjoy a smooth, frustration-free introduction to the platform. Gaming, once considered a weak point for Linux desktops, is benefiting from these changes as well. Containerized applications and modern graphics technologies allow games to run more consistently across different systems. Combined with compatibility layers and performance optimizations, Linux is becoming a serious contender for gamers who previously relied on other operating systems. The idea that you can install a game with a single click and have it run securely without affecting the rest of your system is incredibly appealing, especially for people who value both performance and reliability. Another dimension of this feature is how it supports the future of hybrid computing. Many people now use a mix of local applications, cloud services, and remote desktops. The modern Linux environment embraces this reality by making it easier to run web-based applications, alongside native software in a unified workspace. The lines between local and cloud computing begin to blur, giving users flexibility without sacrificing control over their data. This adaptability could become one of the defining characteristics of next-generation desktops. Some critics argue that moving toward containerized apps and immutable systems might reduce the traditional freedom associated with Linux. However, supporters counter that the core principles of openness and customization remain intact. The difference is that users now have safer defaults. You can still dive deep into the system, modify configurations, or build custom workflows. But the average user doesn't need to worry about breaking essential components just to try something new. It's a balance between freedom and stability that many believe will finally bring Linux into the mainstream. Hardware compatibility is another area where Linux is quietly improving. Advances in kernel development and better collaboration with hardware manufacturers mean that modern laptops, GPUs, and peripherals work more smoothly than ever before. Combined with the new features' focus on standardized application delivery, this creates an environment where users can switch to Linux without sacrificing the functionality they rely on daily. The experience begins to feel less experimental and more like a polished alternative to traditional operating systems. The implications for education and emerging markets are especially exciting. Because Linux is open and often free, schools and organizations can deploy powerful desktop environments without worrying about expensive licensing fees. The new simplified application model makes it easier for teachers and students to access essential tools without complex setup processes. In regions where access to technology is still growing, this could open doors to learning and creativity that were previously limited by cost or technical barriers. As we look toward the future, it becomes clear that this feature isn't just about improving Linux itself. It challenges the entire concept of what a desktop operating system should be. Instead of a static environment where users install software and manage updates manually, the modern desktop becomes a dynamic platform that evolves continuously while remaining stable. Updates happen seamlessly, applications remain isolated for security, and the system adapts to the user rather than forcing the user to adapt to the system. What makes this moment particularly powerful is how it reflects broader trends in technology. Smartphones taught us the value of sandboxed apps and permission-based security. Cloud platforms demonstrated the benefits of containerization and consistent deployment environments. Now Linux is bringing those ideas into the desktop world, blending them with decades of open-source innovation. The result feels less like an imitation of other platforms and more like a natural evolution that leverages the strengths of Linux's unique philosophy. For longtime fans of Linux, this change represents validation after years of incremental progress. For newcomers, it offers an entry point that feels modern and accessible. And for the tech industry as a whole, it signals that the desktop isn't dead. It's transforming into something more flexible and intelligent. The excitement surrounding this feature isn't just hype. It's rooted in the realization that the boundaries between operating systems, applications, and services are dissolving. Imagine a future where switching between devices feels effortless because your desktop environment is consistent and secure across different machines. You log in, and your applications appear exactly as you left them, running in isolated containers that ensure stability regardless of the underlying hardware. Developers push updates without worrying about breaking dependencies, and users enjoy new features without fear of system crashes. This vision might have seemed unrealistic a decade ago, but today it feels surprisingly close. Of course, challenges remain. Not every application has adopted the new model yet, and some users still prefer traditional package management methods. Performance optimizations continue to evolve, and community discussions about design choices are ongoing. But that's the beauty of open-source development. Progress happens through collaboration, experimentation, and constant refinement. The fact that these conversations are happening at such a large scale shows how significant this moment truly is. As we wrap up this deep dive, it's worth reflecting on how far Linux desktops have come. What started as a niche platform for developers and enthusiasts is now shaping the conversation about the future of computing. The introduction of this transformative feature marks more than just a technical milestone. It represents a shift in mindset. The desktop is no longer a static environment locked into old assumptions. It's becoming a living ecosystem that adapts to modern workflows, prioritizes security, and empowers users in ways that feel both innovative and familiar. So when people say that Linux just got a feature that changes everything, they're not exaggerating. They're recognizing a turning point where decades of experimentation, community collaboration, and technological evolution converge into a new vision for desktop computing. Whether you're a developer, a gamer, a student, or someone simply curious about trying something new, this moment invites you to imagine a desktop experience that feels more open, more secure, and more forward-looking than ever before. The future of desktop computing may not belong to a single company or platform, but right now, Linux is proving that it has the ideas and momentum to lead the next chapter.